They didn't wait for approval, didn't announce the operation, didn't knock. The Royal Guard raided Camilla's private residence under sealed Crown orders. And what they found? The Queen's ruby necklace, buried in a velvet box. The diamond bracelet, worn on the Commonwealth tour, hidden behind a muslin curtain. Both of them altered, relabeled, and tagged as Camilla's personal property. When she walked into the room and saw them mid-transfer, she didn't panic, she didn't explain. She told them to leave until Prince William landed. And Camilla was caught red-handed, holding the Queen's legacy in her own name. Because this wasn't about jewellery. It was about what power does when no one's watching. And what happens when the guard finally steps forward and says, enough. It was barely past 6 when Sergeant Adrian Kerr keyed into the Fleet Annex sub-vault. The corridor lights clicked on overhead, one row at a time, flickering across polished limestone and temperature-regulated air that never changed, not even in July. He walked in the same way he had every Monday since being reassigned to legacy security 3 years ago. Routine, quiet, the kind of work most people forgot existed until something went missing. That morning, he had one job: final verification of the Tier 1 inventory ahead of the quarterly inspection. Crown classified artifacts, personal effects, items held not as decoration, but as memory. He flipped open the audit register and tapped through the encrypted index, checking the digital markers against the physical vault contents. Most came back clean, green check marks, inventory matched, nothing out of place. Then he reached item number 137B, Queen's ruby cluster necklace. Status: temporarily withdrawn for cleaning. He frowned. Cleaning orders were always 5-day cycles, no exceptions. But this withdrawal tag had been stamped 12 weeks ago. He scrolled down. Item number 138C, diamond bracelet. Elizabeth II, 1972 Commonwealth tour. Same status, same timeline. The chain of custody showed the archivist code H.M. Rosewell. Adrian knew her. Elsie Rosewell had retired 2 summers back, moved to Cornwall, sent a card at Christmas. She hadn't touched a vault terminal in over 20 months. He ran a second pass on the system. The digital record held. Rosewell's signature had been updated as recently as last month. Adrian crossed the floor to the console bay and pulled the sensor logs from the vault egress window. No mechanical unlocks recorded, but the motion detector had logged a triggered exit at 02:13 a.m., 37 seconds of movement, then silence. No transport van recorded at the outer gate. No guards signed out keys. No alarms. He stood still, staring at the blinking cursor on the motion report, the hum of climate control the only sound in the chamber. Either the sensors are lying, he muttered under his breath, or someone used a code they shouldn't have. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then he opened a secure report shell, typed in the anomaly, flagged the items, attached logs, cross-referenced 3 confirmation sources. Encrypted. Tier 2 access only. He hit send. The screen blinked once. Then again. Then. Submission failed. Internal directive filter engaged. Report terminated. Adrian stared at the screen. There was no error message, no system ID, just a clean erasure, like the report had never existed. He turned slowly toward the portrait of Queen Elizabeth that hung across from the main console. Her expression hadn't changed in the 3 years he'd been working here, but in that moment, it felt like she was asking him a question. Something was wrong. Not just with the registry, with the entire system. And if the system had been rewritten from within, then the theft wasn't theoretical anymore. It had already happened. The next morning, Adrian walked into the Royal Household's cybersecurity annex without an appointment. Lieutenant Maeve Holloran looked up from her screens. Another phantom access log? He held up a memory stick. I filed a Tier 2 report last night. Got wiped mid-transmit. Maeve plugged it in. Lines of code scrolled, then froze on a terminal address. This IP is cross-routed through Clarence House's domestic admin layer. She paused. Camilla's household. Adrian's jaw tightened. Maeve pulled courier logs, backtracking the jewellery dispatch. 3 courier tags, but the geolocation isn't Fleet Annex, it's Belgravia, Chester Row. That address is registered under Camilla's private holding company, she added, and that Sandringham branch in the transfer record doesn't exist. The location code was forged. Adrian stared at the 2 crimson markers blinking on screen. One for the necklace, one for the bracelet, both in London. Then we handle it, he said quietly, before it becomes political. The taxi stopped outside a quiet stone cottage on the edge of Berkshire. No guard post, no signage, just ivy climbing weathered brick. The door opened before Adrian knocked. "Sergeant Kerr," said Lady Adele Farringdon. "Come in, you have 10 minutes." Inside smelled of lavender and old linen. Books lined every surface. She gestured toward a seat, but Adrian remained standing and placed a folder on the table. Inside were printouts, item codes, courier tags, registry images. At the top, the ruby necklace and diamond bracelet. Adele's eyes stopped on the necklace first. When she spoke, her voice had softened. These were never display pieces, gifts from New Zealand and Sri Lanka during the Queen's 1977 Commonwealth tour. I packed them myself. She kept them in her private case, not the royal vault. Only wore them twice after, once at the Silver Jubilee and once when she met Mandela in '96. Could they have been reassigned? No. Adrian withdrew a sealed envelope. Queen Elizabeth's handwriting on the front, her signature inside alongside the jewel codes. Adele took it with both hands, fingers tracing the signature like touching a ghost. "You have proof, but if you go public, you'll split the palace in 2. "I'm not going public," Adrian said. "I just want them back." She reached beside her chair and produced a leather-bound folder, cracked edges, water-stained. "My personal record from that tour. Photographs, inscription notes, the Queen's annotations. Bring them home, Sergeant, but do it quietly." Adrian nodded once, took the folder, and left. Outside, the air smelled like rain. Inside, the past had given him its blessing. Colonel Rains didn't look up when Adrian entered the office. He was already flipping through a set of printed logistics reports, the tip of a fountain pen tapping gently against his lower lip. The air smelled faintly of brass polish and aging carpet. Adrian stood at parade rest, folder in hand. "I need an internal search order," he said. That made Rains pause. The colonel set his pen down slowly and gestured toward the folder. "Let's see it." Adrian placed it carefully on the desk. Inside, full documentation of the irregular withdrawal, courier logs, retired personnel signatures, and photographs of the recovered ledger. Queen Elizabeth's handwriting clear as day. Rains reviewed each page without expression. His face remained a mask of professional neutrality. When he reached the last photo, the one with Lady Adele's authentication signature, he closed the folder and set his hands flat on top of it. "Camilla's household is outside your jurisdiction," he said quietly. "Let it go." Adrian didn't move. "Sir, the property in question wasn't catalogued for transfer. It's still under Crown Ledger, not Consort estate." Rains sighed, the kind of sigh that carried years of exhaustion. "You think I haven't read the same reports? You think this hasn't already reached certain desks?" He leaned forward, voice dropping lower. Orders came from above. "Do not pursue this." "That's not a request, Sergeant." Adrian held his ground. "With respect, sir, I'm not pursuing gossip. I am pursuing items the Queen personally marked as restricted from reassignment." Rains stared at him. The lines around his eyes deepened, and for a moment Adrian thought he saw something like sympathy there. "There's a difference," Rains said carefully, "between protecting the monarchy and picking a fight with it." "I didn't start the fight," Adrian replied, "but I can't ignore where it's led." Rains shook his head once and tapped the folder with 2 fingers. "You hand this over, I lock it away. You keep pushing it, and you'll find yourself reassigned to ceremonial drills at Balmoral until you forget how to read a vault log." Adrian said nothing. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Then he saluted, short and formal, and turned on his heel. Rains didn't stop him. That night, after lockdown, Adrian returned to his barracks. He didn't expect company. He didn't even turn on the light at first, just kicked off his boots and sat on the edge of his bunk in the dark. But when he opened his door to grab water from the hallway, something slid under the threshold. A plain cream envelope. No insignia. No department seal. He picked it up, turned it over twice, then opened it beneath the small desk lamp. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. 7 words in handwriting he recognized from state documents. "If you still believe in duty, meet me at Northolt at dawn." At the bottom, a single initial. Boisbeau. The sky over RAF Northolt was the colour of slate when Adrian arrived just before 6. A low wind swept across the tarmac, rustling the edge of his coat as he passed 2 silent guards at the outer gate. No greetings, no names exchanged, only a single nod and a hand gesture toward Hangar C. Inside, the lights were already on. 6 folding chairs, 1 long table, a stack of plain black cases in the corner, marked with heritage-grade seals, and an unopened evidence container bearing a wax stamp, Privy Council crimson. Prince William stood at the head of the table. No entourage, no medals, no ceremony. Just a dark civilian coat and a file already opened in front of him. He looked up as Adrian entered. "Sergeant Kerr." "Sir." William didn't ask him to sit. He simply nodded once toward the folder. "You've seen more than most people will ever know exists," he said. "What you've documented aligns with what we've been tracking quietly since March. 3 other items have disappeared from long-term archive without authorization. This time, we intercepted it early." Adrian glanced at the logbook beside him. "Do we know what else was removed?" "The ruby cluster necklace, the diamond bracelet, a coronation clasp from the Commonwealth Archive." William's voice remained even, controlled. "All now verified by digital tag, currently at the Belgravia address. That residence is not registered under Crown Protocol. It's private property." Adrian didn't flinch. "Then we retrieve them." William studied him for a long moment. Not suspicion, evaluation. "You understand what you're stepping into?" "Yes, sir." "It won't be seen as enforcement. It'll be seen as provocation." "With respect," Adrian said steadily, "not recovering them would be a betrayal." William nodded once, or almost to himself, like he'd been waiting for that exact answer. He turned to Inspector Rafiq Kane, who had remained silent until now. A seasoned investigator from the Metropolitan Police Heritage Unit, Kane looked like he belonged more in a war room than a museum. Dark coat, sharp eyes, the kind of calm that came from years of high-stakes operations. "You'll lead tactical coordination," William told him. "Sergeant Kerr will serve as identification lead. This is not a raid, it's a quiet recovery." Kane opened a leather folder and began reviewing a layout map of the Belgravia townhouse. Unmarked vehicles, no insignia, entry with signed warrant, everything documented, no force unless obstructed. Adrian stepped closer to the table as Kane laid out the plan. 2 teams, plain clothes, limited personnel. Entry scheduled for 20 hours after staff changeover, before Camilla's expected return from a charity dinner. William picked up a sealed envelope bearing the sovereign's decree and placed it into Adrian's hands. The weight of it felt heavier than paper should. "Everything you need is in there. Legal authority, custodial rights, full inventory clearance." He paused, his eyes locking onto Adrian's. "No damage, no publicity, no spectacle." Then, quieter. "But if anyone tries to stop you, you answer to me." The room stayed still. Kane checked his watch. "We move at dusk." And just like that, the quiet war for legacy had begun. By dusk, rain had turned to drizzle. Adrian sat in the second vehicle, watching the townhouse grow larger through the wipers. Georgian stone, polished railings, warm lamplight. Behind those curtains sat two pieces of jewellery older than the residence itself. Inspector Kane leaned forward. "We enter as professionals. You speak first if we reach the pieces. I'll handle resistance." Adrian nodded. The convoy halted half a block away. 6 people in dark coats stepped into the night. 1 stayed with vehicles. The others walked to the front gate. A butler answered before they knocked. He saw Kane's sealed document and stepped aside. "Follow me." Inside was immaculate. Marble tiles, antique paintings, no photos of Elizabeth. Just Camilla, on horseback, beside Charles, at state dinners. A piano played upstairs, slow and deliberate. They moved room to room. In the second-floor salon, Adrian paused. Near the fireplace stood a display cabinet draped in muslin. He pulled it back. Inside were the velvet cases, most bearing Camilla's cipher, but 2 had no seal, just old satin cord tags. Adrian opened one slowly. The ruby necklace gleamed up at him, the bracelet beside it, but wrong. The diamond clasp reset in platinum. The Queen's original inscription gone. "They've been altered," he whispered. Kane opened a drawer and pulled out an invoice. Jeweller's letterhead, 6 weeks old. Stone extractions, clasp adjustments, personalization overlays. Billed to H.R.H. Queen Camilla. Private collection. "This isn't custody," Adrian said. "This is pre-sale restoration." He keyed his radio. "Control confirmation. Begin packing." But before anyone moved, a door opened at the hall's end, heels on hardwood. Camilla had come home early. Camilla stopped halfway down the staircase when she saw them. 4 strangers in plain black coats standing in her drawing room, velvet cases open on the floor, gloved hands transferring something into museum-grade containers. Her voice cut through the air like a drawn blade. "What do you think you're doing in my house?" No one moved at first. Inspector Kane turned slowly, calm but firm. "Ma'am, we're conducting a legacy recovery operation under Crown directive. You are not expected to be in residence." Camilla descended the stairs with deliberate precision, each step controlled, as her eyes swept across the room and landed on Adrian, still crouched beside the open jewellery chest. Her expression shifted, not confusion, not even outrage, recognition. "You," she said. Adrian rose without flinching. "Sergeant Adrian Kerr, Legacy Security Office. These items," he gestured to the ruby necklace and diamond bracelet now visible in their transport foam, "were removed under falsified documentation and reclassified without custodial review." Camilla's eyes narrowed. "Those pieces were being restored. They were mine to modernize." Adrian shook his head. "They were never reassigned. They remain catalogued under Her Late Majesty's personal ledger with no testamentary handover, no legal transfer of custody." She stepped closer, her voice dropping into something sharper. "They were gifts. She said so herself. Not in writing, not in law, and not in Crown inventory." Camilla's jaw clenched. "You mean to humiliate me?" "No, ma'am," Kane interjected quietly. "We came quietly to prevent exactly that." Adrian opened a side drawer adjacent to the display cabinet and pulled out another file, this one stamped with Camilla's own cipher. Inside were altered certificates. Elizabeth's handwritten signature obscured by glued seals, new appraisal dates, fresh ownership claims typed over the originals. He held one up. "This isn't reassignment, it's fabrication." Camilla didn't blink. Her voice remained cold. "I authorized everything through Clarence House." "Clarence House," Kane said evenly, "has no jurisdiction over personal legacy items protected under Article 8 of the Crown Legacy Act." There was a pause, then she laughed, sharp and humorless, like glass breaking in another room. "Legacy," she said. "Legacy is what people remember, not what they bury in vaults no one ever sees." Adrian stared at her, the velvet case still open at his side. "Then why hide it?" Behind him, one of the guards lifted a lid from the final crate. Inside sat a folded cloth pouch, tucked into its corner, a sapphire brooch Adrian didn't even know was missing, one worn by Elizabeth at the G20 reception in 2009. Uncatalogued, unlisted, hidden. He turned back to Camilla, voice quieter now. How many more were taken? Camilla didn't answer. Instead, she motioned sharply toward the hallway. You'll leave this house now, and you'll leave that box where you found it. Adrian met her gaze, unmoved. I can't do that. He reached for his radio. Control, containment confirmed. Prepare for royal arrival. Camilla's expression barely changed, but her next words came in a hiss. You'll regret this. Adrian didn't respond, because somewhere in the distance, growing louder by the second, was the sound of helicopter blades cutting through London's rain-drenched air. Camilla didn't flinch as the windows began to rattle. The rhythmic thrum of rotors grew louder, closer, until it seemed to fill the entire townhouse. Outside, in the glow of street lamps and mist, the unmarked helicopter circled once over Belgravia Square before beginning its descent into the small park behind the row of townhouses. Adrian didn't move, neither did Kane. The recovery team paused mid-transfer, waiting for what everyone in the room already understood. The cavalry wasn't coming. It had already arrived. Camilla turned back toward Adrian with the slow composure of someone deeply practiced in maintaining appearances. She reached for a side table, calmly removed her gloves, and folded them into her handbag before speaking. This is private property. You've made a mistake. Adrian kept his voice level. Ma'am, you are in possession of Crown classified artifacts, removed without authorization, altered without oversight, and stored without declaration. We have both the physical and legal documentation to support immediate recovery. Camilla stepped forward, her posture regal, her tone venom wrapped in velvet. Those stones were forgotten, mismanaged, hidden away in some airless vault while moths chewed through history. I had them restored, brought back to light. You call it theft. She waved a dismissive hand toward the velvet-lined case. I call it correction. Adrian didn't blink. Restoration is not reassignment. Correction is not concealment, and Her Majesty's intent was never up for reinterpretation. Camilla's jaw locked. She is dead. Adrian's voice remained unchanged, but her wishes are not. Camilla moved within feet of him now, eyes fierce and unyielding. You've just ended your own career, Sergeant. Adrian stared back, quiet but certain. Better mine than the Crown's reputation. For a moment, neither moved. The rain continued its soft percussion against the windows. The rotors outside had fallen silent. Then Camilla looked down at the necklace, now packed into its protective shell, its facets dulled under foam and evidence wrap. She gave a bitter, humourless laugh. You think you're protecting legacy, she said, but all you're doing is erasing me from it. They already shine, ma'am, Adrian answered quietly, because she wore them with humility. That's what people remember. Camilla turned sharply toward the doorway. Derek, she called. Two of her personal security staff entered, broad-shouldered, suited, and visibly uncertain about what they were walking into. Escort these men out. Kane stepped forward now, producing the full warrant and flipping it open with practiced precision. This is a sealed directive, issued under Privy Council authority, bearing the express command of the Prince of Wales. Any obstruction of this order constitutes a direct violation of Crown statute. The two guards hesitated, looking between Camilla and Kane, like men caught between orders and law. Camilla's voice dropped into a low, trembling register. You think you can walk into my home, take my property, override me, without consequence? Adrian took one breath, then another. No one walked into your home, ma'am. We walked into a vault that wasn't supposed to exist. Behind them, one of the younger recovery officers keyed in the final inventory tag. A soft electronic chirp confirmed full item verification. And then, a knock at the door. Not hesitant, not forceful. A royal knock. Measured. Final. Kane glanced once at Adrian, then moved toward the entrance hall. Camilla didn't turn to look. She already knew. The door opened. Boots clicked against marble with military precision. Prince William entered alone. No escort, no press, no announcement, just a single legal officer, a step behind, and the quiet authority of someone who had waited long enough. He took one glance at the packed containers lined up near the fireplace. Then he looked at Camilla. "This ends now," he said simply, and the room fell utterly silent. Prince William didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The mere sight of him standing at the threshold in that storm-grey coat, collar still damp from rain, eyes scanning the dismantled room, was enough to redraw the centre of gravity in the space. Camilla turned slowly to face him, her expression a portrait of controlled outrage. But she didn't speak first. William stepped forward, the legal officer handing him a folder as he passed. He accepted it without looking. His focus never left the velvet containers now packed and sealed across the room. His voice, when it came, was quiet and impossibly clear. "Status?" Adrian answered immediately, spine straight. "All recovered items confirmed, sir. Secure condition. Photographed, documented, and prepped for return to Windsor." William nodded once. Then he looked directly at Camilla. "Ma'am," he said, "these artifacts are not decorative. They are not private property. They are not sentimental tokens to be repurposed at will. They are part of a national legacy, carried, not claimed." Camilla's posture stiffened. Her voice, when it finally broke the silence, was bitter and low. "You speak to me as if I were a criminal." William didn't flinch. "I speak to you as someone accountable." He opened the folder and withdrew a single document, embossed with the sovereign's seal, stamped by Privy Council authority, dated that very morning. He passed it to her with deliberate care. "This is a revocation of custodial privilege for all legacy classified items previously under your access. Effective immediately, all future transfers must be cleared through the Legacy Protection Office under direct oversight." Camilla's hand trembled slightly as she accepted the paper. Her eyes didn't lower to read it. "You've humiliated me." William's reply was almost too quiet to hear. "No, ma'am. You humiliated what you were meant to protect." The words landed like iron dropped into still water. Behind him, the legal officer began documenting the final elements of the scene, filing photographs, cross-checking the recovery tags against the official manifest. Kane gave a subtle nod to the team. No verbal cue, just motion. The final case clicked shut. The clasps were sealed. Adrian approached William and offered the transport log, each page signed in sequence, every item accounted for. William reviewed the entries carefully, then, without ceremony, reached into one of the open cases. He took the ruby cluster necklace from its protective foam, turned it slowly in his gloved hand under the light, and replaced it gently into the Crown Standard carry case. He closed the lid with a soft finality. "Take them home," he said. Camilla said nothing. Her eyes burned, but her voice, for the first time all night, was gone. As the guards lifted the containers with professional care, the air in the townhouse shifted, like history itself had stopped holding its breath and could finally exhale. William turned to leave. No more warnings, no speeches, no lingering looks. Only the sound of boots returning to the threshold. Behind them, Camilla stood frozen beside a room now filled with empty cases, broken seals, and a silence she could not command. The convoy moved through London's quiet streets without sirens or ceremony. The rain had eased by the time they rolled back through the south gates of Windsor, but the cobblestones still gleamed wet under the pale glow of courtyard lamps. No announcement had been made. No escort waited. Just two unmarked black vehicles pulling silently into the rear court as dawn crept over the eastern parapet. Adrian rode in the second vehicle, seated beside the sealed transport container. His gloved hand rested lightly against the foam casing, not for weight, but to remind himself it was real. They hadn't lost it. Inside the legacy vault, the air was exactly as he'd left it, climate-locked, time-resistant. It still smelled of polished glass and archival linen, of centuries preserved in controlled stillness. But something felt different as he keyed in the chamber code and stepped across the marble threshold. He carried the final case himself. One step at a time, across that long corridor lined with centuries of memory, Elizabeth's coronation veil behind glass, her state diaries from Canada, the pearl earrings she wore on her first Christmas broadcast. He stopped at pedestal case 4, opened the lock, and returned the ruby cluster necklace to its original resting place. The velvet took it back like nothing had ever been missing, like it had been waiting patiently all along. Then came the bracelet. The clasp had been damaged during the alteration, the engraving dulled, but it was intact. It clicked into its recess on the silk-lined cradle, like it remembered the shape of home. Adrian keyed the case shut and signed the digital restoration log. Recovered intact. Operation complete. He turned to leave, shoulders finally relaxing for the first time in 48 hours. But waiting at the entrance, without sound or announcement, was Colonel Rains. No salute, no reprimand, no lecture about protocol or consequences. Just a silent envelope in his hand, extended forward. Adrian accepted it without a word. Inside, cream stationery, unsigned. But the handwriting was unmistakable. Some houses shelter memories, others steal them. Thank you for knowing the difference. Duel. Adrian folded the note carefully and slid it into the same desk drawer that held his Afghanistan campaign medal and the faded photograph of his first day at Windsor. Then he straightened his uniform, adjusted his cap, and returned to his post outside the vault door. No headlines followed in the morning papers. No articles appeared online. But through the palace corridors, and among those who understood the language of quiet decisions, the word travelled like wildfire wrapped in silk. The guard hadn't hesitated when the moment came, and the legacy was still intact. Some legacies, Adrian had learned, weren't inherited. They were fought for. Should a royal guard have the power to act when the monarchy itself crosses the line? Was Prince William right to override palace walls for the sake of protecting what came before? And what would you have done if you found the late Queen's jewels hidden in plain sight, altered, repackaged, and waiting to be sold? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If you believe duty should always outweigh privilege, hit that like button, subscribe with the bell icon turned on, and share this video with someone who still thinks royal guards are just for show. Our next story is already waiting for you. Click it now, and we'll see you tomorrow at the same time with another confrontation that proves silence can carry more weight than power ever could. Until then, remember, some things aren't inherited, they're protected.